The Knicks have finally done it. For the first time in 53 years, they're NBA champions, and at the center of it all was Finals MVP Jalen Brunson. In a series defined by elite defense, physicality, and constant adjustments, Brunson found a way to rise above the chess match. Time and time again, he delivered when New York needed him most. So, how did he do it, and what made this performance so special? In today's video brought to you by PrizePicks, we're going to break down everything. The beginning of this game was all about San Antonio's defense, more specifically the way Wemby completely took away the rim. The biggest chess match throughout the series had been finding ways to keep Wemby close to the basket against New York's 5-out offense while they did everything in their power to attack him in space. The Spurs won this battle in Game 5. Their game plan against basically any 5-out offense during these playoffs had been built around keeping Wemby low. He's going to match up with whoever's in the weak side corner. That way, he's in position to roam the baseline and protect the rim. Then they'll rely on their speed to rotate around him and close to shooters. The Knicks have tried to exploit that in a few ways. One is handpicking his matchup and playing from that corner. This time it's Cat who tries to beat him on a drive, but Wemby just walls that off and blocks a finish. Something else they've done is put their best shooter in that corner, which in this series meant OG Anunoby, so that they could isolate Wemby. From there, if they're able to put pressure on the rim and force him to help, they should get a good look. Not only was his execution nearly flawless in this one, the Spurs as a unit rotated to near perfection, allowing them to keep him low at all times. Take this play for example. Brunson gets around his man in the backcourt and drives right at Wemby to draw help. OG's wide open, only for Vassell to immediately X out while everybody else slides one pass up. Wemby can just set up camp underneath the basket and OG has to settle for a mid-range jumper. We've also seen the Knicks use movement to put Wemby in tougher spots. As soon as Brunson starts his drive, Bridges cuts behind the big man to clear that space. They do a good job of containing the ball, then Brunson resets for an empty side isolation. But as long as Wemby's roaming along the baseline and they don't give Brunson the middle of the floor, again, the best shot he can get is a mid-range jumper. Here's another one that starts with an empty side isolation. This time it's Cat posting up a wing. Wemby cheats over early to protect the paint and OG looks open, but remember they're gonna X out to take away that option. Shamet makes a great play, cutting into that space. It just happens to lead right into the game's best shot blocker. So they weren't able to attack him in the corners, with empty side isolations. Another option was to isolate him on one side of the court, then pull him up into ball screen action. But part of keeping Wemby low meant switching him onto the ball. There's no angle to drive, and they don't have to worry about a mismatch, just pushing all of New York's offense away from the basket. Unless it was Brunson handling the ball. While they were switching these actions earlier in the series, one of their Game 5 adjustments was to keep Wemby off of him if they could. Instead, he's going to play the ball in a high drop coverage without committing, then retreat back to the baseline while somebody else rotates over to the screener. Like I said, there's no access to the paint. They had to beat San Antonio's defense with jumpers. And we saw the exact same thing during the Luke Kornet minutes. Similarly, they want to keep him low. But if he gets pulled into action, he's actually going to jump all the way out with an aggressive hedge. They wanted to make Brunson get rid of it early. Then, like clockwork, everybody else rotates one pass up while he recovers to the baseline. They aren't able to find an open shooter or a lane to attack, and the possession devolves into a Landry Shamet isolation. I'd imagine that's not what the Knicks are looking to get to. Just like with Wemby, dropping instead of switching, this hedge and recover was exclusive to Brunson. If anybody else used a screen, Kornet would stay back in a deeper drop coverage to protect the paint. They're comfortable letting anybody else take pull-up jumpers. All that's to say, the Knicks couldn't score, they couldn't find space, they couldn't create advantages, and they rarely got a clean look, which is why after 12 minutes of play, they had only scored 13 points. Then things got even worse to start the second. These were their first non-Brunson minutes, and all of the issues that were apparent in quarter number 1 got dialed up to the max. Not only did they have trouble setting up the offense and getting into the half court, once they did, it felt like they had no form of advantage creation whatsoever. Nobody could get open, so they couldn't force help or get the Spurs in a rotation. This was complete defensive dominance. They went another 3 minutes without scoring the ball, which meant they had now scored 13 points in 15 minutes of play. And they didn't break the drought with a strong offensive possession. It came off of a last-second prayer to beat the shot clock from Karl-Anthony Towns. When Brunson finally checked back in though, they still had a problem. Because now Cat wasn't on the court, and if they can't go 5 out, Kornet can just roam underneath the basket without much consequence. He doesn't have to recover to a shooter, so they don't have to bring help from the perimeter. Anytime Brunson looked for space, whether it was with the help of a ball screen or an isolation, he just ran into a big man. But instead of an open shooter, the three-point line was guarded just as heavily without the Spurs being forced to rotate, which became an especially prominent issue when Wemby checked in. He dropped against every ball screen from Robinson. He played free safety from the dunker, roaming into an early help position. Like I said earlier, everything for the Knicks would have to come over the top of the defense, even after getting a second chance. And the one guy who consistently found that offense was none other than Jalen Brunson. To call this performance from Brunson heroic would be an understatement. In a game that was mostly dictated by an all-time Spurs defense, which completely took away all of New York's most efficient shots, Brunson delivered his magnum opus, a true offensive masterpiece. With Mitch in the game, Wemby's always going to be at the rim without penalty. How do you counter? By walking down your defender one-on-one and pulling up for a long three in his grill. It's so much more than just Brunson's shot making though. He's a master of getting wherever he wants on the court thanks to his handle, his frame, and maybe most importantly his use of pace. He's the king of herky-jerky movements. On this play he comes off a screen, finds a sliver of room, and bursts into a drive. That's what gets him the initial advantage. But it's what he does after the advantage that makes him unique. He leans into Fox, hesitates to throw off his momentum and his timing, then immediately pulls up. That's a pretty open shot, which for him is a layup. It wasn't until late in the second that he started to take matters into his own hands and get overly aggressive. This time they empty his side of the court for a ball screen, and Vassell tries to push him up top, but like I said, he's a master of getting wherever he wants on the court. Of course, a baseline drive just funnels him right into Wemby, but that initial action got him the switch he wanted, so they reset for an isolation. Before he can attack, Vassell comes back with a double, and he goes over it. That's just world-class shot making. I don't even want to think about what the Knicks offense would have looked like without him. After that quick scoring outburst, they still only had 37 points at the half. This was their lowest scoring half of the entire season. But you could argue that this was the least of their problems, because on the very first possession of the third, Cat picked up his 4th foul. He'd have to sit for the entire quarter and most of the half. No more 5-out spacing. An aggressive Brunson would have to drag this offense, by himself, against an all-time paint defense. But before we get into what that looked like, I want to take a second to thank PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. If you know you can play responsibly and you have the means to do so, PrizePicks is America's #1 app for sports picks. So if you're looking for a place to get in on action this summer, use code HMA and get started. The NBA season is finally over, so we'll be taking our talents to the WNBA. We've got a big night of games coming up. Wings versus Aces should steal the spotlight, and in this matchup, I like Jackie Young. She's averaging 21 points a game over her last 5. I'm taking her at 15.5. On the other side, I like Paige Beckers as a facilitator. She's averaging 7 assists over her last 5 and had 6 assists against the Aces just a couple weeks ago. We need her to get 5. And it's that simple. Find the stat you want, pick more or less, and you've got your lineup. If you sign up for PrizePicks with code HMA and play $5, you get $50 in lineups instantly. So download the app to get started today, and let me hear your picks down in the comments. Without Cat to space things out, the Knicks wanted to find a way to pull Wemby to the perimeter. That meant putting him in ball screen action. But against Robinson, he just sat back and dropped coverage. However, I'm focused on Brunson's skill set. Earlier, I brought up his tight handle and his frame. This renders him basically immune to gap help. With Castle on his hip and Fox stunting at the ball, there's no room for him to get to the paint unless he goes through Castle, and that strength gets him a solid 6 feet closer to the basket on his jumper. Another aspect of Brunson's skill set that separates him from some other creators is his elite pull-up three-point shot. It's harder for Wemby to drop if Brunson can make him pay through even the tightest windows. This one was so tight that the refs missed a flagrant foul. All that's to say, they had some success pulling Wemby into action. This one starts out of bounds. Brunson runs off a down screen, which creates separation from Harper. Then he gets a handoff. And because of the three-point threat, Harper gets overzealous, sending him to the line. We saw the same during Cornette's brief stint. Again, it's a down screen into a handoff. But remember, Cornette's jumping out in a hedge, so Brunson turns the corner, gets around him, and walks into a layup. For the most part though, New York's second half offense was built around his isolation game. That meant finding ways to create as much space as possible in the middle of the floor. With Robinson in the short corner, opposite of the ball, and their 2 best shooters on the weak side, they aren't able to bring help before he gets to the paint. From there, he's an imminent threat to either rise up or draw a foul. Here's another example. With Hart up top, Castle's able to load up in the gap and protect the nail. So he clears out, giving Brunson access to the middle. Again, it's his strength, bumping Champagnie off his body and rising up for one of those mid-range layups. Their go-to floor alignment, though, is the flattened out baseline. They'll empty both wings and start Brunson up top. That way there's limited gap help and he can get to the middle of the floor by attacking to his left or right. Like clockwork, he takes a narrow driving lane to avoid Harper's stunt, gets deep in the paint, and creates separation. Wemby has to contest, which leaves nobody to keep Robinson off the glass. Brunson delivered a huge third quarter. He was their entire offense. In the fourth, he finally had some help. Not in the scoring or creating departments, but with spacing. Cat was back in the game, which led to more pathways for them to attack Wemby and get Brunson closer to the basket. Take this play. They want to pull Wemby up to the ball, so they stack one side of the court and isolate him against OG on the other. There's no way for the Spurs to keep him out of the action. And remember, they want to have him drop, then recover to the baseline. But for no apparent reason, they abandoned that coverage and let him switch. From there, the Knicks emptied that entire side for Brunson to go one-on-one. He threatens a baseline drive, then bursts back to the middle before hitting Wemby with his herky-jerky moves, making contact, starting and stopping, throwing off his timing to create a shot at the rim. Brunson was thoroughly outclassing this Spurs defense. He got wherever he wanted, baited them into fouls, hit tough shots, and when the moment called for it, attacked in transition. He was in complete control of the game, like we've seen so many times throughout his playoff career. But with less than 2 minutes left, Cat picked up foul number 6. He was done. In came Robinson. Brunson would have to close this one in classic Brunson fashion. Tie game, 1 minute and 15 seconds left to go. Look at how the Knicks set up the court. Robinson's in the short right corner while Bridges is deep in the left. There's an island of space to attack near the left wing, and Castle does a great job of pressuring the ball, but makes the mistake of not taking away that side of the court. There's no help, and like I said, once he's got the advantage, there's not much you can do to stop him. So next time down, the Spurs finally went for the anybody but Brunson defense. When he goes one-on-one, they send a double from the opposite side of the court. Again, I want to reiterate that he'll get wherever he wants. He avoids the double and beats his man, collapses the paint, then makes a beautiful pass to Josh Hart. This could have been the dagger, but it just rimmed out, leaving the Spurs with a chance to push the ball in transition, down 2, 30 seconds left. I think Harper made the right decision here. He just couldn't convert on a tough finish. And from that point forward, it became a game of fouls and free throws. It's crazy to me that Jalen Brunson didn't take a single late game free throw, considering the type of scoring performance he ended up having. After it was all said and done, the Knicks had scored 94 points as a team. That's all they needed to win the championship. Brunson had 45 of them. That's 48% of his team's points in a closeout finals game on the road. I think it's safe to say that we have a new gold standard for what emptying the clip looks like from a superstar. In a game where the Knicks, as a team, couldn't find any way to crack an all-time Spurs defense, Brunson put them on his back and delivered an instant classic. 45 points on 67% true shooting in every way imaginable to secure Finals MVP and bring the Larry O'Brien back to New York for the first time in 53 years.